This is a recording of one of our online sessions for parents and carers, which explores support for pupils in mainstream schools who have coordination difficulties. It is part of a short series of videos focusing on school support for pupils with different types of special educational need, or SEN. We know that many children and young people have difficulties which fall into more than one category of SEN, so you may want to watch another video in this series. But just bear in mind that the majority of slides about the graduated approach to SEN support will be the same in each of these videos. For this recording, I am joined by a paediatric occupational therapist from the Integrated Community Paediatric Services in our county of Suffolk. She will be exploring what schools could reasonably offer in terms of support for pupils with coordination difficulties. This recording will explore some key principles of SEN support, including whole school and whole class approaches, and this will be from slide 4. I'm going to explain what's known as the graduated approach or the graduated cycle of SEN support and how you and your child are involved from slide 14. We're going to look at some examples of targeted support which schools can reasonably offer for pupils with coordination difficulties from slide 18. We'll discuss positive approaches for working with schools from slide 26. And we'll also explore the advice which schools can access if a pupil needs more support from slide 34. We've created timestamps under this video's description on YouTube, so if you want to watch just part of this recording again, you can click on a particular section and the video will start at that point. I'm going to be referring to the Special Educational Needs and Disability Code of Practice in this recording. This is statutory guidance, so it comes directly from law. You can download this for free. It is very long, but you could scroll through to Chapter 6, which is all about SEN support in schools, and I'll be giving exact references to the code in these slides. So let's start by looking at some key principles about support for pupils. The SEN Code says that all children and young people are entitled to an education that enables them to make progress so that they achieve their best, that they become confident individuals living fulfilling lives and make a successful transition into adulthood, whether that's into employment, further or higher education or training. So schools are expected to support a child or young person to develop not just their academic skills, but the social skills and self-confidence they will need so that they can move successfully into adult life, whatever they choose to do. The law expects high quality or quality first teaching, which is personalised and flexible for the whole class. This means being flexible with the way teachers teach and communicate, and how they use resources to help all pupils understand and learn. This is called differentiation. And some pupils with additional needs may have all or some of their needs met through this differentiation for the whole class. There is a greater recognition now that many approaches which are good for pupils with SEN are good for all pupils. So there's more emphasis on establishing inclusive learning environments where SEN support is an essential part of whole school practice rather than an add-on. In our experience, when parents meet with school to discuss support, they often want to talk about targeted interventions for their child, and we want to encourage you to also explore whole school and whole class approaches which would help your child and other pupils. Many children and young people with SEN have told us that they don't like to stand out as different in school. So the more whole school and whole class approaches are able to support them, the more included they will feel. So let's consider some examples now.
Children with motor coordination difficulties may present with problems moving around the classroom. They may be clumsy, tripping or falling often. Difficulties getting dressed and undressed for PE, including doing buttons, zips and shoelaces. They may struggle to participate in PE, for example due to poor balance, ball skills or difficulties following a sequence of movements. Difficulties sitting comfortably and or securely on their chair or on the carpet. Difficulties using cutlery at meal times, for example struggling to cut with a knife or successfully load a fork or spoon to bring the food to their mouth. Problems with recording their work, in particular problems with producing legible handwriting at a good speed. Difficulties using tools during art and craft, for example operating scissors and cutting with control and accuracy. Being disorganised or slow to carry out a task, for example gathering their belongings at the end of the day. Difficulties with playing with friends because they cannot physically keep up, not because of any social difficulties. Here are some of the possible causes for the difficulties we have just listed. Some children may experience problems in just one area or a combination of areas. Postural instability, otherwise known as poor core strength. Joint hypermobility, which means increased range of movement at a joint, which can result in a lack of stability. This is quite common within the general population, and for some people it can be of an advantage, for example for gymnasts. But difficulties can be experienced when someone lacks muscle strength and struggles to control their bendy joints. Muscles then have to work harder, which can also lead to fatigue and/or pain. Poor coordination and/or motor planning, which can result in a child struggling to organise their body parts to move in a smooth and synchronised way. Difficulties with visual perception and visual motor integration, which can make it difficult for a child to interpret and respond appropriately to what they see. This is not a problem with their vision, but how their brain responds to visual information. Problems with sensory processing, which in the context of motor skill difficulties, usually we are thinking about how a child responds to touch, the sense of movement, and their own sense of body awareness. Some children's motor skill performance can be variable depending on how focused they are at the time. If they are distracted or not paying attention, they may lack accuracy in their movements, and the quality of their performance may be affected. For some children, their motor skills are delayed as a result of a global developmental delay or learning disability. This means that all areas of their development are delayed, and their motor skills are in line with their cognitive or learning level. Some children can struggle to regulate their behaviour and emotions. We often see children rushing tasks they do not enjoy, or they perceive as being too difficult or boring. This can mean they appear clumsy, or the outcome lacks accuracy because they have not taken enough care over their performance. Some children have not yet acquired basic motor skills due to a lack of experience or opportunity to practice and refine these skills. So what can we do to help and support children with motor coordination difficulties? We can modify the task, alter our expectation of what the child needs to do, teach new or different strategies that suit the child's learning style, consider changing or adapting the classroom or learning environment. Simply help by listening to the child and understanding their strengths and areas of need so that support can be put in place. Some of these strategies can be put in place as part of whole class or whole school approaches or differentiation. On this slide we look at some examples of how tasks can be modified or expectations of what the child needs to achieve can be altered to enable them to participate more easily. Children can be provided with easy to use or adapted tools or resources, for example larger balls in PE, rubber pencil grips to make it easier for the child to hold a pencil, adapted scissors which are easier to operate and enable the child to complete the cutting activity where they may not have been able to if they were using standard scissors. It also helps to emphasise fun and participation rather than skill or competition in sport. Children can simply be given extra time to complete a task. The structure of the task can be altered, for example, instructions broken down into short, simple, clear steps, either verbally or using visual aids. Fill in the gap worksheets can also be used to reduce the amount of writing a child is expected to do if they struggle to complete work in the given time. We can also support by teaching children to use strategies that aid their independence, encourage them to take more responsibility and reduce their reliance on adult support. For example, support children to use visual schedules for understanding, remembering and following the stages for dressing for PE, rather than relying on an adult hovering over them and providing verbal prompts. The multisensory technique is commonly used within everyday teaching. it involves using creative ways to teach or practice a skill which utilises a range of methods that meet the needs of visual learners, auditory learners, or kinesthetic learners who learn through doing. For example, when teaching letter formations, it is important for children to clearly see the letter they are trying to write and for it to be presented in a fun and eye-catching way. They may also need to hear a verbal instruction as to where to start the letter and which direction to go. They will also need to practice drawing the letter, and this can be done in many different ways, for example using their finger to draw in a tray of sand or shaving foam, or using large movements with their whole arm, which is called skywriting. It is also important that we consider the impact of the physical environment. Classrooms are lovely, bright, colourful places, but for some children this can be very distracting, and they may need to be positioned somewhere with fewer distractions. It is also really important for all children, but particularly those with poor core strength or balance, that they are positioned correctly at the table. They need to be sat on a chair that allows them to have their hips, knees and ankles at 90 degrees, with their feet flat on the floor, and at a table of a suitable height. This is to ensure that they have a stable base of support to enable maximum fine motor control. Some children may, for example, require a footbox under their feet or a smaller or larger table and chair. And finally, as previously mentioned, we can simply help by listening to the child and understanding their strengths and areas of need so that support can be put in place. If we recognise where a child's needs are, we can ensure that activities are set at a just right level, which will hopefully make them feel more willing or able to succeed, and ultimately make them more engaged in the task. It is really empowering for children to have their voice heard and for them to reflect on their own progress and how they feel about the support they are receiving. This slide shows some examples of resources that can help children to reflect their thoughts and ideas and have their voices heard.
Now we've talked about the fact that whole class and whole school adjustments may meet the needs of some children with additional difficulties, but there will be others who will need more help. They may have a special educational need identified, which means they need support which is additional to or different from the support made generally for other children or young people of the same age. Following the Children and Families Act of 2014, nurseries, schools and further education colleges are expected to follow what's known as the graduated approach to SEN support. This involves a 4-stage cycle of assess, plan, do and review, and we're going to look at each of these stages in turn in this recording. Schools must inform you when they are making special educational provision, which means support, for your child. Now the first stage in the cycle is assessing your child's needs, and this is where the setting draws on their understanding of your child's progress and attainment, draws on the views of you and your child, and if relevant, the advice of external services. The SEN code is clear that schools should take seriously any concern raised by a parent. The second stage is where support for your child is planned, and here the teacher, often with the Special Educational Needs Coordinator, or SENCO, explores and agrees with you, and as far as possible with your child, what support and interventions they will offer based on what your child needs to be able to do, which is often referred to as outcomes. The plan can also include how parents can be involved in supporting this process. It should be clear what impact is expected from the support strategies and also a date for reviewing these to check that they are working. All teachers and support staff, including teaching assistants and lunchtime supervisors, should be made aware of this support plan and it should be recorded. So even though there is no longer a requirement for an individual education plan or IEP, you can ask for a copy of the support plan. Schools can record your child's needs and support in different ways. They might use resources like pupil passports or one-page profiles like the templates you can see on screen. Whatever form is used, what is important is that you and your child have been fully involved and fully understand what has been agreed. In order to engage with the support, your child needs to understand what the point is, in other words, what they will be able to do with the help. And they need to know what the support will look like so that they can be prepared for what to expect. And you need to be clear so that you can support your child to work with school. Now we're just going to pause for a moment to think about the kind of support that schools might reasonably explore with you. Remember though that these are just examples. Every child is different and will present with different needs, so this is just to help build your overall understanding and confidence when talking to schools.
Before I run through some examples, I just want to mention that the Occupational Therapy Service that covers the west and south of Suffolk are currently developing a resource pack for school staff and parents with the aim of providing guidance on strategies that should be implemented as part of the graduated approach to SEN support for children with motor skill difficulties. The expectation will be that these ideas will be trialled prior to referral onto OT for specialist support if this is deemed necessary. We appreciate that school staff and parents have varying levels of knowledge and experience of motor skill difficulties and strategies that may help, but we hope that this resource pack will help you when planning what support your child needs. This is by no means an exhaustive list of support that could be considered for your child, but these ideas are common practice for children with motor skill or coordination difficulties. For children with gross motor skill difficulties, this may include problems with balance, ball skills, general coordination and motor planning. Children can be supported with regular gym trail sessions. These are sessions often run by a teaching assistant and involve a small number of children. It provides the opportunity to practice their skills in a more protected environment. Activities are usually set up in a circuit and are adapted and graded to an appropriate level for the children. There are a number of lovely resources on YouTube. Many of you may already be aware of Joe Wick's PE, but for some children with motor skill difficulties, this may be too challenging or fast-paced. There are more appropriate examples such as Trifu Tom's spell poses, Griffin OT videos, and Cosmic Yoga, which are generally slower and broken down into simpler steps. For children with fine motor difficulties, this may include problems with eye-hand coordination, in-hand manipulation, hand strength or using tools such as scissors. Finger or hand gym are small group sessions focusing on practicing these skills. Again, these sessions are often supported by teaching assistants, but some children may be able to access a box of finger gym resources independently once this has been set up for them. For children that have difficulties at mealtimes, it is important to remember the basic principles of good sitting posture that we discussed earlier. In addition, some children may benefit from using adapted cutlery with larger moulded handles that enable them to achieve a more stable grasp. It can also be useful to provide practice opportunities outside of mealtimes, for example with Play-Doh or easy-to-cut snack food. This enables children to focus on the skill of using their knife and fork. Handwriting difficulties is a very broad topic and we only touch upon a few ideas here. But parents and school staff should be considering what adapted writing tools may be helpful. For example, chunky pencils, moulded pens or rubber pencil grips that help children to improve their finger position on the pencil. There are also a number of commercially available handwriting programs that most schools have already purchased and can use to help structure and guide additional handwriting sessions for children in small groups. In addition to the basic principles of good sitting posture that we have already discussed in relation to furniture heights, the use of a move and sit cushion could be considered. This is the blue wedge cushion pictured here. This is an air-filled cushion which creates a moving surface for the child to sit on. The idea is that the movement helps to keep the child alert and therefore helps the child's attention and focus. They can help children who are constantly moving about, fidgeting and rocking in their chair by providing a sense of fidgeting without such noticeable movements. They can also help a child who is slumped in their chair and appear to have low energy, as it may help them to feel more alert. Wedge-shaped cushions help tip the pelvis and therefore promote a better upright sitting posture as well. Writing slopes or angled desktops can also be trialled. These are sloped writing boards that are placed on the table to help improve paper position, encourage a more upright posture, and aid a more functional forearm and wrist posture, which can assist with handwriting. Strategies to support with dressing difficulties can include clothing adaptations, for example, alternative shoelaces, such as the grouper shoelaces pictured here, or magnetic shoelaces. Marks & Spencer's and Asda sell an adapted school uniform range, which includes Velcro button adaptations and elasticated waistbands in older children's sizes. In the classroom, children could benefit from use of a visual dressing schedule to help with organising themselves, and in combination with a sound timer, this can also help them to stay on track and dress more quickly.
Now we come to the third stage in the graduated cycle of support, where the setting gets on and puts the agreed support in place. With the support of the SENCO, the class or subject teacher oversees the support and should work closely with teaching assistants and specialist staff to assess the impact of the support plan. The law is clear that schools must use their best endeavours to make sure that a child with SEN gets the support they need. This means doing everything they can to meet children and young people's SEN. However, this doesn't mean that they all have to offer the same strategies, and the culture and physical environment of a school can influence this. Every child is different, and sometimes schools may need to try different ideas before they find what works best for your child. So if a setting is unable to offer a particular strategy that you or your child requests, it's important to ask, what can they offer instead that will have a similar impact to meet your child's needs? What is key is that they are doing all they can to meet your child's individual needs. And the final and very important stage in the graduated cycle is the review, where the setting evaluates the impact and quality of the support, deciding on any changes with you and your child. So you will be looking at what has worked well, what hasn't worked as well as expected, and what the setting can do next to try and help your child make better progress. The SEN Code says that parents should have clear information about the impact of the support and interventions provided, enabling them to be involved in planning next steps. So just to be clear, for nurseries and schools, the SEN Code says that parents and pupils should be involved in 3 stages of the graduated cycle: in assessing your child's needs, in exploring and agreeing the plan of support, and at the review. As the SEN Code states, parents should be fully aware of the planned support and interventions. For further education settings, the emphasis will be on exploring and agreeing support directly with the young person. However, the SEN Code states that parents should be involved, particularly for those aged 16 to 18 years. The SEN Code also says that parents know their children best, and it's important that all professionals listen and understand when parents express concerns about their child's development. They should also listen to and address any concerns raised by the children and young people themselves. Research has shown that pupils make the best progress when families, schools, and where relevant, the local authority, are working together in equal partnership. So we encourage you to approach school offering to work with them to support your child. When preparing to meet with school to explore SEN support for your child, you might like to make bullet point notes of what you and your child think have been working well, what your child is still struggling with, and any ideas that you or your child think might help. Or you may find that a one-page profile helps your child or young person to share and capture their views. The Helen Sanderson, Chef Kids, and Preparing for Adulthood websites have many person-centered resources and one-page profile templates which you can download for free, like the one you can see on screen. This short video, created by the Psychology and Therapeutics Services in Suffolk, explains what a one-page profile is and how to create one. Some families have chosen to take photos with their child or young person of the resources and approaches which help best at home or have helped in previous settings and have emailed these to school. Don't forget to share what your child enjoys doing. If your child is distracted or upset at school, presenting or talking about something they enjoy may be the best way to help them refocus or calm down. We would encourage you to acknowledge the school view and experience along with sharing your own. It's common for pupils with additional needs to present very differently at school and at home, as the environments and structure of the day are so different. So aim to pool everyone's understanding about your child's needs in equal partnership. Agree to work towards the future. Try not to dwell on past problems. It's helpful to spend the majority of your discussions on exploring solutions together. And before your meeting ends, check back and record any agreed actions or ask the school to email a record to you. Make sure that you all have the same perception of what has been agreed, who is responsible, and what the reasonable time frame is for these actions to happen. For a detailed exploration of practical and solution-focused approaches for preparing for and managing meetings and conversations with school or the local authority, you may like to watch our video of the online session we offer parents and carers called Working with Schools. It's helpful for you to be aware of the school's SEN information report. All schools must publish this report on their website, and the information must include explaining how the school assesses a child's SEN, how they review your child's progress, and evaluate how effective the SEN support plan is. It must show how the school will involve you and your child in the process of identifying and supporting SEN, and explain the approach to teaching pupils with SEN and how adaptations are made to the curriculum and to the environment. This report is a tool for you and your child to refer to. It should increase your confidence and your child's confidence and understanding of the graduated cycle of SEN support. The SEN code therefore says that it should be easily accessible and written in a way which is easy for you and your child to understand. When your child is moving to a new school, the SEN information report will be a good starting point to help you to find out more about the SENCO and the school approach to SEN support. Now, we've talked about the fact that the law expects the needs of the majority of pupils with SEN to be met through the 4-stage cycle of SEN support. But sometimes, despite a setting's best endeavours and trying different strategies of support, a child or young person might still struggle with their learning and require more support. The SEN code says that where a pupil in school continues to make less than expected progress, despite evidence-based support and interventions matched to the pupil's area of need, the school should consider involving specialists. And in further education settings, the SEN code still expects specialist help to be involved where the student's needs are not being met by strong evidence-based support. So who might these specialist and outside agencies be? Every county will have some specialist services able to support schools to support pupils with SEN. In our county of Suffolk, there are 5 specialist education services. The first 4 services match the categories of special educational need outlined in the SEN Code of Practice. So there is a cognition and learning team who can offer support and advice for pupils with a range of learning needs, including moderate learning difficulties and specific learning difficulties like dyslexia and dyscalculia. The SEMH team offers support for pupils with a range of social, emotional and mental health difficulties. The Communication and Interaction team offers advice and help for pupils with speech and language and/or social communication needs. And there is a team to offer advice and support for pupils who have physical, sensory and medical needs. This includes pupils with hearing and visual loss or multisensory loss. In addition, Our County of Suffolk has a whole school inclusion team which supports whole school practice around SEN and inclusion. In line with the SEN Code of Practice, these specialist education services can support children and young people between the ages of 0 to potentially 25 years if the young person is still in some form of education or training and there are still learning needs. No formal diagnosis or education, health and care plan is needed to access these education services. Parent consent is required, and the education setting should discuss the referral with you, sharing aims and what everyone would like your child to be able to do with the additional support and advice. Every county council will employ a team of educational psychologists, and in Suffolk, the Psychology and Therapeutic Services can offer further advice and support around emotional well-being, mental health, behaviour and learning on an individual, group and whole school basis. Their service also includes a team of inclusion facilitators who can offer immediate therapeutic support, frequently at times of transition or high anxiety. For children attending school in the west or south of Suffolk, they would access the occupational therapy, which is part of the Integrated Community Paediatric Services. They accept referrals from school SENCOs and see children from reception through to the end of Year 7. Referrals need to highlight motor skills that are impacting on 3 or more areas of difficulty for the child, for example handwriting, using scissors, dressing, throwing and catching a ball. So they would not accept a referral for a child only presenting with difficulties in one area, for example just handwriting. The service is not a diagnostic service, and they are therefore not able to support assessment for dyspraxia or developmental coordination disorder. The specialist health and education services that a child with coordination difficulties receives is not dependent on whether there is a diagnosis of anything or not. All support offered will be needs-led. The referral form can be found on their website. Website details for Suffolk OT services will be on the final slide of this recording. The aim is for schools in the west and south of Suffolk to have access to an OT resource pack in the autumn term of 2021, and it will therefore be expected that SENCOs evidence what strategies have been implemented from the resource pack before referring to occupational therapy. In addition to the resource pack, schools in the south and west of Suffolk can access a free motor skills workshop to help staff better understand how to use the resource pack and to discuss some of the strategies in more detail. This will help staff put ideas in place as part of whole school and whole class approaches or as part of targeted SEN support for individual children. They are also working on a longer-term project aiming to offer a training programme for teaching assistants to support them in running gym trail and finger gym sessions. Children who attend schools in the north of Suffolk would access occupational therapy via the team based at the James Paget University Hospital. We understand they are aiming to offer a similar package of training for schools.
For those of you that are looking for more information or ideas to try with your children, you could visit the Cambridgeshire NHS OT website. They have produced some online learning sessions and downloadable resources which are free to access. We are working on developing our website and hope that we will soon have online resources for you to access.
Before we finish this recording, we just wanted to highlight that if a pupil is still struggling, despite a setting doing all it can and accessing specialist advice, then the child or young person may benefit from what is called an Education, Health and Care, or EHC, needs assessment. These assessments help identify the education, health and care needs which are making it difficult for a child to learn in a nursery, school or college, and identify the support which may be required to meet those needs. We have lots of information and videos about the EHC process on our Suffolk SENDIAS website and YouTube channel, which you might find helpful, along with further information about inclusion and equality for children with special educational needs, disabilities and medical conditions. This video was made by Suffolk SENDIAS, but if you are watching it from another county or will soon be moving to another county, remember that we are a statutory service, so every county will have an impartial and confidential SEND information, advice and support service.